Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to a quick little tutorial. I'm going to be showing you guys this cool creative effect within After Effects, and I'm going to be showing you guys how we can create some cool flashy third eye effects. I know that Film Riot made a third eye effect tutorial a while ago, but I think this one is going to kind of mix in some different elements. I'm going to show you some different things like creating little 3D lines that are kind of tracked to the eye and just some other ways we can do it, some creative ways we can put a spin on it. Full BTS on this music video is going to be dropping soon. If you guys didn't see my last video, 3D starter pack should be dropping tomorrow or the next day. It's just about ready. I wanted to delay it a little bit so I could work on some more useful things to make sure you guys get full value for that. Anyways, let's get right into this tutorial. So we're going to start off here within After Effects, or if you'd like, what you can do is cut out a part in Adobe Premiere, right click on it and click replace with After Effects composition to bring that into After Effects. But once we are in After Effects, here's our base footage. Let's go ahead and set up this for our track. Let's start off by first finding a part in the video where we can actually take one of his eyes and then create a layer for that. So right about here I think looks good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click Control D to duplicate that layer, and then I'm going to select our duplication and click Control Shift D just to split it. We can delete this excess that we don't need. Then I'm going to right click on our duplication and I'm going to go to time and I'm going to go to freeze frame, and that's just going to freeze this so that it is frozen in time. Pretty simple. We've done this a lot on my channel if you guys are experienced viewers. And what we're going to do now is right click on that duplicated clip and I'm going to go to rename, and we can name this eye. What you can do now is you can actually take your pen tool or click G on your keyboard and we can just mask out the eye itself. That's a little bit easier for you so that we actually have a layer with just a eye like this. Now I'm going to hide this bottom layer so we can look at just the eye layer, and then I'm going to click M on my keyboard with the eye layer selected to bring up my mask options. And then if we expand that, what we can do is we can add a little bit of a feather here, and you guys are just going to see these edges, these rough edges here, just kind of smooth out like that. That's looking pretty good. Now if we bring back our bottom layer, what we can do is we can take our top layer, click V on our keyboard just to bring up our normal cursor, and we can just drag this on his forehead like that, and then we can go ahead and mess around with the mask to blend that in, and I think that looks pretty good. Now the only issue here is that we don't actually have this tracked onto our subject. So if I press play, you're gonna see it just kind of stays in space there. So what we're gonna have to do is just do a simple little motion track. It's gonna be pretty easy. And then another thing I want to show you is just some cool ways we can design the eye, like maybe making the actual pupil of the eye some different crazy colored. We'll try and show you some crazy color animations that you can do with it, as well as I'm going to go ahead and take these triangles to be shooting towards the camera from the eye, just like this. So some cool stuff going on here. Let's hop back into After Effects, and I'm actually going to resize this, so press S and I'm just going to scale that up. Alright, now let's go ahead and set up our motion track. So we can hide this for now, and we're going to select our normal footage here, and we're only going to be motion tracking from here because I want the eye to pop up right when he looks up like that. If you're going to be doing it for a longer clip, keep in mind that if he's blinking, having that third eye on his forehead the whole time might offset a little bit, especially if you are going the freeze frame route that I showed you here, where it's just going to be a normal eye. So we're just going to have it kind of trigger at this point in time. Let's go ahead and right click our footage, and we're going to go to track and stabilize, and then we're going to click track motion. And it's going to put us in a layer here, and it's also going to pop up this track point. Pretty standard stuff. Now in terms of the track, I'm going to try and put it on his nose because I feel like that's a pretty easy thing to track on his actual face. It also is aligned with his forehead, which is pretty good. Now you can do the actual facial track method within After Effects where you draw a mask around their face and then use the facial track features. So before we track this, let's right click here, go to new, and we're going to go to null object, and I'm going to rename this to tracking info, and this is just going to serve as a placeholder to contain our tracking information and all our tracking keyframes. With that done, click back on our clip, and then let's go ahead and find this tracker window that should pop up once you selected the tracker. We're going to click edit target, and we're going to select our layer as our tracking info, which is the null we just created. Position is fine. If you're doing a lot of rotation scale, you can check that, but if it is a complex track, you may want to look into some other tracking methods like Buju or Cinema 4D, but for what we're going for here, this is going to work fine with just position. Now let's go ahead and just click play, and I think that did a great job so far in just keeping a really good track. So let's go ahead and click apply, and then this is going to pop up X and Y. Just click OK. So what we just saw is we now have this red null here, this tracking info null, that is tracked perfectly like this onto the tip of his nose. Okay guys, so once you have that tracking information created all ready to go and you have your eye layer, what we're going to do is we're going to start parenting the eye and some of the design graphics to this tracking information that we created and put on this null. Also, just so it's a little bit easier to see, I moved my camera over, so hopefully that'll help. So let's start setting this all up. Let's first start with the eye and track that onto our forehead, and it's actually pretty easy. Let's just select the eye, and we're going to click toggle switches and modes until we see parent and link. We're going to select that for our eye and just put it on tracking info. Now if we play this, you'll see that this is following the general direction of the null that we've created, which is pretty good. We're going to create some things just to smooth that out a bit. Whenever we parented it, it kind of popped it over. Let's go into our eye options, and the first thing we're going to do is select our eye layer itself. And you're going to see this little dot, this little crosshair here. This is actually our anchor point for the layer. Let's go and put this somewhere a little bit better. So we can select this anchor point moving tool, and we can place it maybe on the corner of where the null is to see what that looks like. Make sure that you don't mess that up, because sometimes when you click off, it'll move. So if we play that, that's what that looks like. And we're just going to go in and make some normal little keyframes just to smooth this out. Also, I'm just going to click S and scale this up a bit. It's a little bit too small. Now let's open this up and open up our transform options here. I'm just going to keyframe all of these at our beginning position, and then I'm going to drag to the end and just kind of recenter this. I'll maybe even pop the rotation a bit like that, and then see what that looks like. All right, so just by using some quick little keyframe adjustments mixed in with the parenting method that I showed you with that tracking, I think that this is a pretty solid track for what we are going for. Let's play that. I think that looks pretty good. Of course, what you guys can do is you can go into your mask options and just tweak the mask feather, the mask expansion, the mask opacity to make sure that that looks as accurate as possible. And that's basically how you do it. Now we're going to talk about the actual design of the eye. So we're going to start with the pupil, and then we're going to add some cool geometric shapes, kind of 3D projecting out of the eye, which is pretty sick. And it's all going to be pretty easy now that we have the tracking info and you guys have that basic understanding of how to bring the element in and then track it to where we want it to be. So let's start with the design of the eye. Now when it comes to putting some cool colorful animations, you can make them from scratch, or you can find some cool just textures on the internet. And what I'm looking for here is something that's just more of like a colored texture that we can use. So something like this would work pretty well. Something like this is pretty interesting. Right click on this one, save this image, and then we can just drag this into After Effects. And now let's just drag this over so that we can see it in our timeline. So maybe it starts about there. Now let's go ahead and position this. So an easy way to start this off is let's first initially just parent this Giphy thing that we brought in with our tracking info. So change our parent and link to tracking info, and now you'll see that this will follow the motion that we've actually tracked. Next, what we want to do is we can open up this GIF options, and we can just lower the opacity so we can kind of just see what we're doing. And now let's just rescale this, scale this layer down, maybe even make it smaller so we can have more detail. And now what we're going to do is let's go ahead and just play with the opacity so we can see what that's going to look like. Put the opacity on 0, grab our pen tool, make sure that that GIF or whatever you're putting in the eye is still selected, and then just draw a normal little mask around the eye. Like that. Put the opacity on 100%. And then if your mask is on add, which it should be by default, it'll look like this, which is looking great. But let's blend this a little bit better. So click M on your keyboard to bring up those mask options. Let's put the mask expansion down, maybe -2. And then let's feather it. Maybe let's kind of just bump things up. So bring down your expansion and then feather. That's usually the best way to blend things. And that looks pretty sick, so I'm liking how that is looking. Now the only step we need to do here, also let's kind of maybe bring down the expansion a little bit. It's kind of bleeding over. So the only step we need to do here is just create some little keyframes so that this will follow the pupil, which is very easy. Let's go ahead and just select the mask. Let's go ahead and just select this mask here by clicking there. Click on mask path to create a keyframe at our starting position there. And then we're going to drag a bit, grab this edge, reposition it, drag to the end, and reposition it. Very, very simple, just using simple little keyframes. And I think that's looking really, really cool. And then just to top off the whole cool design, you guys can add any effects presets that you guys have. If you need some effects and presets, check out my website, Media Monopoly. Let's just drop some standard glow flicker onto there just to kind of make it pop a bit. We can even bring the threshold up for the glow and maybe drop the glow width. So we're getting some real crazy colors in there, flickering a lot. We can also bump up this flicker to like something like 1, and that's going to basically flash. So that looks pretty cool. All right, so that's the basics of putting crazy animations within the eye itself. Now let's put some crazy geometric 3D stuff kind of projecting out, like I said, and show it in that example. So this is very easy as well. What we're going to do for this is I'm just going to right click down here in this little gray area. Let's save this first so that we don't lose any progress. Right click down here in this gray area, go to new, and then just go to solid. You can also go to layer, new solid, and we're just going to name this line and make it a black solid and click OK. All right, cool. So now what you're going to want to do is go to your effects and presets and look up the beam effect. It's a basic generate plugin which is included within After Effects. Place it on the solid. This should pop up here. The cool thing about this is you have a starting and end point, so it's pretty easy to manipulate this. So first, what we're going to do is let's just make the color this white, and I'm also going to show you later on how we can make some other colored ones. So start it at white. Thickness, let's make these both 3 for starting and ending. Length, let's make that 100%, and then we can go ahead and just take the ends of this starting and end point, and we can start actually making one side of the triangle around this eye, thing like that. Now let's click on our line layer, Control D to duplicate that, and all we have to do is select this duplication, click the effect in our effect control, and then just drag this part down, and then do that one more time. So duplicate it, click the effect, and then connect the triangle. And here what we're going to need to do is actually just kind of finesse this together. So select all your parts, make sure that the endpoints are connecting properly, and then we can hold shift and select all of them, and then let's just reposition that. So that's looking okay in terms of our triangle. Let's kind of make this our beginning position. Well, what we can do here is a lot of different crazy things. So first, let me just show you a cool way we can make this kind of fade in. We can start the opacity at 0, keyframe it, and then using page up and page down on our keyboard, we can just go a few frames and just make this 100 and then 0, 100, 0, 100. That way it just kind of like flickers in, just like that. And you can do that with each edge. You can also make it kind of fade in depending on your opacity keyframes. First, actually, let's change the parenting of all these lines to our tracking info so that it should follow along with everything else. So that's looking okay. And now I'm going to do that same exact effect with the opacity on the rest of these. So start at 0, maybe start this a little bit later than the others. So now we have this cool little animation of it like flickering in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hold shift, select all these lines, and then just right click and then pre-comp them, name them triangle, and then I'm going to re-put the parent link onto tracking info. Now we just have that in one layer that we can change around. I'm going to open up that triangle pre-comp and just drop the opacity to like 50% so that we kind of have these faded cool colorful lines. So that's looking pretty cool. I'm actually going to bump the opacity a tiny bit. I think it's a little bit too washed out. Something like 55, mid 50s. So that's looking pretty cool as our first triangle, like that. Let's go ahead and create our second triangle and add some color onto it. So click on our triangle layer, Control D to duplicate that. Now the key is here, if we actually go into this pre-comp and change things around, it's going to affect everything on this triangle, and we don't want that to happen. So to avoid that happening, let's go over to our project bin and then just find this triangle layer. So we can even right click, click reveal, and reveal layer source and project, and you'll see here's our triangle pre-comp in the project bin. Let's go ahead and Control C, Control V on that to create a duplicate. It should say triangle 2, and then we can hold Alt and click, drag this here so that now this duplication of our first pre-comp is a pre-comp of its own, and it's not going to affect the first one. That may not make sense to you, but guarantee it'll help you so that you're not messing things up that you didn't want to change. So now in this second triangle pre-comp, let's start creating some cool effects. First off, let's click toggle switches and modes until we can see these little options here, and let's just create these, turn these both on to be 3D layers, And once we've done that, we can select this triangle too, and we can actually drag it on its z-axis to bring it towards the camera in 3D space, which is pretty awesome. So here's our z-axis. It's just this blue one, and you can just take and you can just click and drag it like that, and you'll see it move towards the camera. And with the tracking, that should all be the same. If you want to make it a little bit more exact in the z-axis changes, open up transform, and it's this third position here. This is changing your z-axis. You can also do the same thing where I'll just Control Shift D to cut a little part away so that the first triangle shows up, then the second triangle, and then we'll add a third triangle. Or actually what I'll do is, instead of cutting it, I'll just move it over so that we can still see that little pop-up animation. Now let's change the colors on this triangle 2 pre-comp. Let's click on our line here and then go to our effect controls, and we can just select this color here and then just change it so that it's both red. And we're going to do that with each of those lines. Now let's go back to our actual pre-comp, and now you'll see we have a white triangle and a red triangle, which is great. So let's Control D to duplicate triangle 2, move it over a bit, and this will be our third triangle. Let's also go to the project and Control C, Control V on this to make triangle 3 pre-comp. Alt click, drag it onto there. So now we have 3 separate pre-comps, and they're not going to be messing with any of the settings or colors. And then on this triangle 3, we can open up our transform, take the Z, and let's just bump that even closer to the camera. So the animation should look like this. Flickers on one triangle, second, and then the third. Looks pretty sick, just like that. And then we can go into this triangle 3 pre-comp just like that, and then we can do the same thing. We can change around the colors and create some cool stuff, and that's why I really like this effect a lot. If you want, what you can even do is Control C on this color code, and then you can just paste it here on each of these. So Control V. That's looking pretty sick how that flickers in and out. So that is the basics of creating some cool designs for the actual eye itself. We have the animation within the eye. We have some cool little projection coming out of it. Another really cool thing that you can do, and this is the last thing I'm going to mention for this tutorial, is what you can do is, since these are all 3D layers, we can go ahead and make the rest of these layers 3D layers just by doing that. And then we'll close this, and then we'll go to right click, new, and we'll go to camera. And then we'll just create a basic little camera here. And then within this camera, since everything is a 3D layer now that we switched on, within this camera, we can open up our options, open up transform, create a keyframe, and then use C on our keyboard to actually literally zoom through these triangles. And you're going to see, since each of them is a 3D layer, you'll literally be able to zoom through each triangle as if you were traveling through 3D space, which is pretty sick, just like that. And I mean, obviously you're gonna have to work out the animation with that, but you can create some really awesome stuff just by creating that projection effect, and just a lot of cool stuff with the eye itself. So anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. This is more just like a quick little creative trick. Like I said, full BTS breakdown. We have a lot of BTS clips I want to show you, which is new for this channel, and how I shot it, coming soon. And of course the full breakdown for just me talking about the video project itself. 3D starter pack dropping tomorrow or the next day. I'm getting the product cycle finalized for that. I'm excited for that. Definitely going to help you guys. A lot of new stuff coming, guys. I hope you guys are excited. Thank you so much for supporting. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.